Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we're discussing my thoughts on episode 18 of Season 2 of ClassicaLoid, where we're getting back to the pseudo-overhanging arc to do with Wagner Wa-kun, kind of just sort of seeking attention, approval, that kind of thing, affections, from all of the Classicaloids, from Kanai's mother, but most pointedly, from her father and his creator, the creator of all the Classicaloids, Kyogo. And it's kind of interesting how they paint his character in this episode along those lines, where he's writing these grand works of fiction back in the Ark facility, the building, of his homecoming, and how he'll be so well regarded and so held up on a pedestal. And it's all under this specious sort of directive of his becoming rich and famous and creating a revolution of sound, a revolution of music. You know, he wants to be the singular octave where all the Classicaloids were a part of it in season 1. And he wants to be recognized by Kyogo for that. You know, he has such contempt for the idea that he is botched, that he's imperfect in some way. And for the longest time, that has been largely revolving around the fact that he could not summon forth musique, or, it would come out sputtering and only, sort of half or even a fraction of what the other Classicaloids could. And obviously he has evolved beyond that. Now he can summon forth musique, and he even summons forth brand new musique by the end of this episode. But transformative music in a negative sort of connotation, where he becomes almost a monster. You see his one eye go from green to a sort of pinkish red. And then everything, all the scenery and everything that was once glorious and brightly lit becomes very dark and very, stamping down. And all these little knights are like, they got hot dog weapons that they're beating people over the head in the crowd of this concert that he holds, because all of his approaches to this, from getting his face plastered on advertising and food items and things like that, and leaving his CDs all around Ottawa Manor and all that kind of stuff, trying to get their attentions and win them over this way. He's completely approaching it in the wrong way. And he doesn't recognize, because he's kind of, created this self-exile surrounding himself. He doesn't realize that he actually has people who are already very much, concerned for him and care about him. Kanai being the tippy top, but even Kanai's mother to a degree. And if he weren't so absent-minded and just lost somewhere in the world, maybe Kyogo as well, I'm sure he has an attachment, an affection for his creations, the Classicaloids. I don't know if he could necessarily answer to it the way Wa-kun wishes he would, recognize him as his son, as this great, wonderful product of his creation. Maybe Kyogo could. Maybe he'd muster that up. I don't know. He just seems like a little bit of a scatterbrain and a Looney Tune. But you never know. This show, with all the absurdity and the hilarity and the comedy and everything, it does from time to time have a lot of heart as well. So it's altogether, probable and entirely possible that Kyogo might come home and be reunited with Wa-kun and give him that loving embrace that Wa-kun so desires. I just don't know. But it's just really interesting the lengths to which he goes. I mean, he sends armed guards into Ottawa Manor and kidnaps all the Classicaloids, Kanai and her mother and everything like that. Sosuke gets left behind, unfortunately for him. And then just all hell breaks loose. And it's really interesting. Like, he hangs all the Classicaloids in a cage above the stadium where he's going to have this concert. And they're all livid. They're all like, what the hell's going on? When he starts, with the first sort of summoning forth of musique, he's wowing the crowd. He has talent. He's not good for nothing. He's not quite Sosuke level where he's horrible. He has no music at all, no talent at all. But even in the crowd, there is someone else who very much is enamored with him and has affection for him that he just doesn't recognize. Kanai's friend, whose name escapes me, who is really head over heels smitten with him, really, really wants to love and support him. You know, he's just blind to it. He created this wall, this divide between himself and everyone else. And if only he could, you know, sort of break back through that, he would see all that worth, all that compassion, all that, you know, sort of looking upon him with love lights and respectably and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you got to earn that to a degree, but also it's right there waiting for him if he wouldn't keep removing himself from that equation. You know, there's always going to be a rivalry with the other Classicaloids. You might as well not bother with that, Wa-kun, you know? You're never going to sort of win them over. They're fighting amongst themselves all the time. They're adversarial and all that kind of stuff amongst themselves. So you're never going to get that. But recognize what you could actually have in your life if you weren't doing all this specious stuff about having, you know, to climb to the highest echelon of being recognized and wielding this musical power and everything like that. And it's kind of sad, like seeing the imaginings of his write-ups where he goes back to Ottawa Manor and there's Kyogo. He's the last one to come out, and after everyone has fallen all over themselves for Wa-kun's return, you know, Kyogo comes out and embraces him and has these kind, loving words to say about how perfect he is, his perfect creation, and everything like that. And it's kind of sad when, you know, the concert is going on and they cut back to Wa-kun a couple of times and he's just begging, he's so hopeful that somewhere in the world Kyogo is watching this and being impressed by it, and this is going to, you know, prompt him to return home so that he can embrace his son lovingly and acceptingly. And I mean, it's such, you know, a heartbreaking thing that is the impetus behind what Wa-kun is doing. It's not world domination as was Baksama's sort of, you know, impetus in season 1. They're both kind of trying to employ the same devices, but it's completely different what Wa-kun wants. He wants love and admiration and affection and to be recognized as not being imperfect, as not being garbage, as not being refuse, not being botched, you know. And so there is an element of it that I was sad for him, but at the same time, he really gets carried away with himself. And, you know, I love Beats' being there and being like, okay, we got to teach this little brat a lesson. You know, he really needs to be taught. This kid needs to be spanked every now and again. You know, and out comes his music, and then all the Classicaloids, all of them employ their music. It's like a clash of the musiques, and it's insane. We've seen this before, but I mean, the way it all comes together, the way it all collides is just absolutely insane. And they don't even really show how it all wraps up. It just kind of wraps up. I guess, you know, they all exhaust themselves and all their musics just quit out on them because they're all kind of sitting in you know, the theater afterward and just like, I just want to go home. You know, and but Wa-kun is not to be outdone by this. I mean, even though he has been silenced by all their cumulative musiques together, with Kanai's, you know, trying to implore him to back off of this and to be one with the group, he sees that as a slight against him. He sees that as her siding with the rest of them. So if you're not with me, you must be my enemy, you know. And that harkens back to the title, you know, Goodbye, Sister, whatever it was, where he's effectively cutting her off. And she is so heartbroken. I felt so bad for her in that moment. You know, she really genuinely, among all of them, she is the one who cares the most genuinely for him as like a little brother and a friend. And, you know, he's not satisfied with that. That's not answering to what he has pictured for himself. And that just kind of sucks. You know, I just wish things would work out. And he would find his place amongst them all, you know, and be satisfied by that, be sated by that. And like, it was really kind of interesting how when they're all calling forth their musiques, you know, you had Liz saying something about going after her son-in-law, which was a great reference. A blink and you'll miss it. And most people who would be watching this who don't have any familiarity, who haven't looked up any of these, real world composers, that probably would go over their head. But thankfully, part and parcel with some of the discussions I've had with people commenting on these videos, talking about Classicaloid, going all the way back to season 1, as well as my own, investigating, Googling, and looking through wikis and things like that about these composers, to know that, the real world list did count Wagner as, a son-in-law. And so to have that reference, a very blink and you'll miss a reference, I caught it and I thought it was awesome. It made me smile. And, by the end, Kanai's mother is kind of lost, I think. And so she ends up deciding to go looking for Kyogo and trying to bring him back. And it's funny, there's a point in the middle of the episode where we see Kyogo's like hitchhiking somewhere out in a desert or something like that, and then we see him again and they sort of go over his shoulder as he's walking off screen, and there's Bak-sama as well. Bak-sama's traveling and he happens to be right in the same place Kyogo is, and they don't apparently know they're both there at the same place at the same time. I thought that was hilarious, or at least presumably they don't know they're both there at the same time. Maybe they're actually working behind the scenes, who knows. I think it's more likely they didn't know they were both there at the same place at the same time. But it was hilarious the way they showed that, Bak-sama, he was chased away by Wagner. I think it's Chekhov who calls that out to Wa-kun in the episode at one point when he comes back to Ottawa Manor, and he's waiting for all of, the Classicaloids and Kanai and Kanai's mother to fawn all over him, and they don't. They're involved playing video games or challenging each other, or they're too lazy. They don't want to go see the concert and whatever, which is what prompts him to have the armed guards come in and kidnap them and everything like that. But yeah, this was a great stepping stone, sort of realigning to what the motivations behind everything Wa-kun has been doing are all about. And it really sort of, for the first time, since his character became involved, do I have some sort of empathy and sympathy for him for the first time. I mean, for the most part, I just kind of like hated him. I was annoyed by him. I found him a little kooky, but it was kind of like, what's he after? Is he just an antagonist? Is he just a villain? But here we're seeing that there is more humanity behind, what he's doing, what actions he's been taking. And so that brings him, down to earth a little bit more, even though he's still a little jerk face, by the end. And then the PV for the next episode has me actually really excited, because we're going to have another sort of sideline, I guess, episode that's wholly going to revolve around Schubert and Mozart. And like, I got a real strong Odd Couple vibe by that PV. Like, they're really going to be spending time together, and hopefully maybe, I mean, hilarity is going to ensue, but it seemed to me like, because of, Schubert's admiration for Beethoven, and Mozart's always, sort of pooping all over that, for lack of a better term, farting all over it anyway. It seems like they're going to be, pushed together, and they're going to have to figure something out. Maybe they'll come out clean on the other side with a better admiration for each other and an understanding of each other, or maybe they'll just hate each other that much more. I really don't know, but it actually really excited me, because they have such a rivalry. And to see them forced to interact and forced to be together and forced to, sort of head on, approach each other in that way, is an exciting, hilarious prospect. I can't wait to see how that's, all plays out with that. But so yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 18 of season 2 of Classicaloid, if you've seen it as well. I know not many people who watch my videos watch this show. I wish more did, and more were involved in the conversation, because I just love talking about it. I love this show. It's easily, I wouldn't say it's in my top 5 all-time favorite anime, but it's probably easily in my top 10. Considering both all of the first season as well as what we've gotten thus far of season 2. It's just a genuinely fun time. It answers to my, fascination with classical music, as well as music in general, because they approach it in such a creative way where they create contemporary new versions of these songs, and touching upon all different kinds of musical genres and how they approach that. and also the wackiness of the characters, and you know, the characters, the you know, composers and things from real world history that they've chosen: Beethoven, Mozart, Chopin, you know, Liszt, all this kind of stuff. I mean, Schubert. I love all of it. I love everything about it, and any chance I can get to be talking about it, I don't want to miss that opportunity. But you know, it is what it is. C'est la vie. Not many people are really that talkative about it as much as I am, and whatever like that. But if you happen upon this video, if you happen to be watching this show, if you thought this episode was good, bad, anything, you know, goes, our POVs can certainly disagree. I'd love to hear that in the comments below. And otherwise, it'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.